Good afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Well, I welcome you here this afternoon and thank you for coming so that I can share with the national community what this state of emergency, this limited state of emergency, entails. First of all, I wish to say to the national community that this is intended to assist us in the fight against crime. Accordingly, there may be some areas of discomfort that would be experienced by our citizens, but please know it is in an effort not only to ensure that you are safe in Trinidad and Tobago, but to ensure that we eliminate the elements of crime and criminal activity in our midst. You are aware that as of midnight last night, the state of emergency came into effect as announced by the Honorable Prime Minister yesterday afternoon. As such, there are certain measures that have been put in place to ensure the safety of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. You are aware as well that there is a limited state of emergency, which means it is being exercised in specific areas. These areas include Port of Spain, San Fernando, Chaguanas, Diego Martin, Arima, and the San Juan Laventil area. These areas, the demarcation of these areas are clearly spelled out, and it is in accordance with the communities that have been organized by the local government in respect of the municipalities. The identification of these areas and the borders of these areas are identified in a document that you will have access to later on today. Further, there is some concern with respect to the migration of the criminal elements into other areas. That as well has been taken care of. As you are aware, because of our limited state of emergency, we now have the use of the military to assist the police, and in so doing, they themselves have been given, out of this state of emergency, they have been given certain powers to interact not only with by assisting the police, but also in ensuring safety and security in our Twin Island state. Our objectives are primarily to eliminate crime. Our objectives deal with, of course, most importantly, our serious crimes, including homicides. We are going against these gang members who have been using firearms to murder our citizens at will. We are also looking at the drug traffickers. We are looking to get these weapons off the streets and from our communities. This limited state of emergency will carry with it a curfew in the areas so affected from 9 p.m. at nights to 5 a.m. on mornings. Initially, we had looked at the 6 to 6 curfew, but because primarily of other entities making a case for a later starting time, in particular our Muslim brothers who, as you're aware, they are, at present they are observing the holy month of Ramadan and they have their prayers at various times. So we extended it to 9, from 9 to 5 instead. What citizens are asked to do, if for any reason you are not required to be on the streets after 9 at night, please cooperate with us and stay at home. If there is no necessity for you to be anywhere, the best place to be is at home. It allows the security forces to carry out what they are expected to do in a manner that will not allow anyone who ought not to be on the streets to be involved in any activity that could interfere with their peace and security. With respect to our independence celebrations, we have taken the decision, and this decision was taken by the Interministerial Committee that was appointed by the Honorable Prime Minister to oversee the activities. And this committee includes the Honorable Attorney General, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Communications, the Leader of Government Business in the lower house, and as well the Leader of Government Business in the Senate. And this committee will be overseeing what has been happening or what will happen over the period of the state of emergency. With respect to passage of personnel, as we speak, efforts are in train to ensure that all those who are required to be on the streets after 9, particularly in the curfew areas, we are ensuring that those passes are made readily available to them. In the unlikely event that by tonight, we expect by 6 o'clock this evening, that all those who are supposed to be having those passes will have them. In the unlikely event, the few people who do not acquire those passes by the time they need to be out on the streets after 9, we are asking them to walk with 2 forms of photo ID. The officers, law enforcement officers, the policemen, and the army out there have been advised that because this is the first evening, there may be a few who may not have their passes. If that exists, then it will be taken and dealt with leniently by the law enforcement officers. Generally, we are attempting to bring back peace and civility in Trinidad and Tobago to ensure that our people do not impose curfews on themselves as has been happening in the past. The aim, therefore, is to ensure that our citizens are comfortable when they need to deal with issues, particularly at night time. The state of emergency will allow our law enforcement officers to do a number of things, inclusive of search and seizure, and that does not only reside with the police, but it resides with members of the army as well. So in that respect, I'm asking the national community to cooperate with us so that we can come together as a country and ride ourselves out of this situation of criminal activity that exists in Trinidad and Tobago today. I thank you. Any questions, please feel free. The Honorable Attorney General, the Commissioner of Police, and the Chief of Defense Staff can assist me in areas that I am incapable of handling. Yes, sir.
You did mention that you would be looking at putting some date place for independence to this committee. That indicates that this curfew would be going for some period of time. Is there any specific length of time that you're looking for?
The law provides for 15 days.
So is it that you will go to that extent of the law to implement it for the first 15 days initially?
Yes, we will.
Mr. Sandy, could you outline how citizens are going to get these passes?
I will ask the Commissioner of Police, the Acting Commissioner of Police, to answer because it is in his purview so to do. Commissioner? Oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. As it relates to the passes that are supposed to be issued, and if I may refer to it as permits, citizens can apply to the police station nearest to where they reside and from those police stations, we shall be issuing those passes. As it relates to organizations falling within essential services, we will be facilitating those organizations through the police headquarters, the Office of the Commissioner of Police, and arrangements are at this point in time being made to so issue to those organizations. Persons who are traveling out of the airport at Piarco can receive those passes issued at the next to the domestic terminal at Piarco International Airport. Yes.
One can imagine that thousands of people are going to be approaching police stations for these passes in district police stations. What provisions have been made within each police station to accommodate these people?
Well, also remember that the passes are not being issued to every citizen within those communities that are subject to the curfew. Passes are being issued for persons who would be required by way of issues around work, persons falling within the realm of the essential services to facilitate them to and from their workplace. It's not a matter of issuing passes to every citizen within our community who applies for a pass. So there will be clear limitations in relation to persons who are being facilitated with passes.
We still anticipate this could be quite a bit.
Well, it is a bit, and is a challenge which we will, in fact, seek to fulfill to the best of our ability.
Could you say who are within the essential services, for example, does the media fall within them?
To the best of my knowledge, the media doesn't fall within essential services.
Not to belabor the point, but obviously you have the 10 o'clock newscast and so on. That would be taken into consideration.
Application made to the Office of the Commissioner of Police, and consideration will in fact be given.
Can I ask about taxi drivers as well? People who are providing a service for others who may or may not fall within these curfew areas. Any consideration as to what would happen to those taxi drivers?
Well, remember, there will be clear restrictions in relation to movement. The reason behind a curfew is to ensure that persons who do not have particular kinds of business are off the street at particular times of, within the time frame of a curfew. And in this instance, we are speaking about 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. There will be no passes to taxi drivers and maxi taxi drivers and PH drivers and whoever else.
But if you've got those that fall within those essential organisations that need to use public transportation, how will that then work? If you're giving it to an individual who needs a car and needs to use a taxi, how will that work? And the taxi driver may not have a car. How does that work?
Well, we need to understand these persons also would have to adjust their arrangements to access their home location if those are the challenges that they are confronted with. But how do you discriminate, or how do you choose which taxi in an environment that you issue a pass to? It's something which is almost an impossibility to manage.
One can imagine mass chaos from this afternoon, because you're going to have people who are going to finish work, let's say 6 o'clock, who think they can get home by 9 o'clock, but you're going to have a huge volume of people trying to get out. You're going to have taxi drivers who are concerned that they themselves are going to break the curfew. Those people are going to be stuck in Port of Spain and elsewhere.
Well, you do in fact have the additional services of the Public Transport Services Corporation, which facilitates most areas around Trinidad and Tobago today.
But will they be going servicing the population after that?
Well, I cannot indicate when they will service, but surely an application out of Public Transport Service Corporation will be facilitated by way of permits.
Should persons applying for permits also supply with the application picture ID?
The picture ID is critical in relation to possessing the permit. So they would have a permit issued to them, and they would have their picture ID to support the permit.
Could they supply a picture, passport size picture with it?
We have not requested that.
What exactly qualifies one of these areas to be under curfew?
Well, that is a decision taken at the level of the National Security Council and endorsed by the cabinet as to the selected areas.
But there are many other areas throughout the country where crime is seen rampant in the areas and they don't fall under these areas. So what then?
The limitation in relation to these areas are specific. The policing of Trinidad and Tobago continues at even heightened effort by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So those other areas are not areas not considered from a policing perspective. We will be policing the entire Trinidad and Tobago, seeking to address crime throughout wherever crime occurs or wherever persons who commit crime are located.
So will it be heightened in the areas that don't fall under these areas?
It's heightened for the entire Trinidad and Tobago. Policing is heightened for the entire Trinidad and Tobago.
Lastly, will this take effect during the day as well, the heightened police presence?
24 hours.
Can I ask what someone should do in case they have a medical emergency and they do not have a pass? What guidelines would you give to that person as they get into the hospital also?
Well, they use the normal route that they would use to access a hospital. We will be giving clear instructions to our officers and similar by way of, if I can just add from our discussions with the Chief of Defense Staff, we will be giving our officers and both the police and the soldiers clear instructions in relation to exercising key discretion in these matters.
Mr. Williams, will the soldiers be deployed with police officers together with them, and who's going to be in charge of these little units, let's say going out patrolling Laventille or wherever? Who's going to be in charge of those? How do you determine who's in charge of those?
There is a long history of effective collaboration between the Defense Force and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and that history facilitates us at this point in time to work well in the event of this emergency state. So the soldiers will be collaborating with the police as we look at putting key operations in all the areas.
So will they, what I'm trying to find out, with each, let's say a jeepload of army men or whatever, will they have a police officer with them, or they're going to be operating on their own? How is this going to be done?
Well, the point is that the Army is not dependent on the police service to operate under a state of emergency. So they do in fact have the authority, the power to operate on their own within those areas. But as I said, there will be collaboration. So there will be times when the members of the Defense Force will be working together with the police. There will be times when they will be working on their own because they do in fact have the necessary power and authority to so do under a state of emergency.
I ask this because there is a great distrust of the discipline of our soldiers. The National Security Minister himself has alluded to arms disappearing from the armory at Petron and so on. So here it is, we have soldiers looking for ammunition, for arms and ammunition. How can we trust that they will be pursuing this in an orderly manner?
But what I can assure you that I will speak authoritatively for the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. The Chief of Defense Staff will speak authoritatively for the Defense Force.
Can you say whether the Defense Force officers will have powers of arrest?
They will. And if I may say, they do in the context of the state of emergency.
This is obviously to combat crime. Now, what would national security, how would they measure the success of this move? How would they measure the success? How will they know if it was successful?
By way of the results, if the public at this point in time use a barometer of homicide, Trinidad and Tobago on an international perspective, crime other than homicide is pretty low if you compare with any country. Other crimes other than homicide. Violent crimes is the main thrust. The public actually highlight in the context of violent crime. So the public at this present point in time utilize violent crime, especially homicide, as a barometer to measure. Surely out of this we can in fact measure. There is a tracking by the media every single day, tell you 262, 263, whatever. So out of this you surely can measure, obvious, clear measurement.
But then if the 15 days intend to deal with the situation?
We will deal with the situation as it presents itself.
Minister, can you again go over Madam Minister Media, the expanded powers of the police and army in terms of what will entail regarding the first 24-hour arrest without a warrant and what will have to transpire regarding the apprehension of that person for the further 7 days after?
I will ask the Honorable Attorney General, it's the legal authority.
Thank you. Any citizen who is arrested and they can be detained for a period of up to 24 hours in the first instance. Thereafter, a magistrate or a police officer from the rank of assistant superintendent and above has the power to authorize a further period of detention not exceeding 7 days in total. So that would be the extent of the period of detention under the emergency powers regulations. Of course, we also have it available in our armory, the Anti-Gang Act, so that if there is evidence forthcoming that can lead to a charge under the Anti-Gang Act or suspicion that you were committing an offense under the Anti-Gang Act, that could in fact lead to a further period of detention if necessary.
And under the expanded powers, the suspect will not be able to be granted bail?
No bail. Well, the question of bail doesn't arise under detention period. And if you're charged for offenses that rise under the regulations, there is no bail as well. But mind you, within that period of 7 days, you do in fact there's a tribunal that will be appointed by the Honorable Chief Justice. Minister of National Security and myself, we are going to meet with the Honorable Chief Justice today, and I suspect that is one of the matters which we will be addressing. But the Honorable Chief Justice is charged with the responsibility to set up a tribunal so that anyone who is detained, they have the right to make a representation to that tribunal, and the tribunal will expeditiously hear and determine their grievance and their dispute, as it were.
There have been, in the media domain in the past weeks, reports of police brutality raising emotions in some areas. How is the ministry going to deal with the situations that people are reporting that were dealt with in an overly aggressive manner?
There have been far more allegations of human brutality against the citizens and law-abiding citizens of this country that disproportionately outweigh the allegations of police brutality. Any form of abuse of power by any state official is not something that will be treated lightly, and we therefore ask that police officers and soldiers approach this in a mature and responsible manner, because we have every confidence in them that they will. Law-abiding citizens in this country have absolutely nothing to fear by this declaration of a state of emergency. In fact, people in Trinidad and Tobago have been living in a state of denial for far too long, because there has been an undeclared state of emergency whereby people live under self-imposed curfew for the past 9 years in this country. And if we are honest about it, after 9, many people do not feel free to leave their homes, but prefer to stay indoors. I am yet to see a single bandit put up a single stick of burglar-proofing outside his window. But in the last 9 years, I've seen innocent law-abiding citizens not just lose fathers, mothers, brothers and sisters, but I've seen them barricade themselves and peer from behind burglar-proof bars as if they are imprisoned in their own homes while bandits roam the streets freely. The time has come for action. These are desperate times because we sense and identify with the desperation of the population. And that is why we have taken this decision to act firmly. You may recall that the Ken Gordon Committee, which was commissioned and established under the former administration in May of 2003, tendered a report and submitted as one of its main recommendations a declaration of a limited state of emergency. That, in July of 2005, was rejected by the then government. And that rejection came on the heels of the bombing in Port-of-Spain. It came on the heel of rampant and astronomically climbing murder rate. And it came on the heels of what was then 6 kidnappings for ransom in 1 week. And in that scenario, the then government said that they had crime-fighting strategies in place, which included the plan from Professor Matrosky, the blimp, and certain other measures. we feel as a government we have a duty and a responsibility to the citizens of this country to guarantee their safety and protect them. Your fundamental human rights and freedoms mean precious little if at the end of the day, life, limb, and property cannot be guaranteed and protected by the state. So, ladies and gentlemen, we want to reassure law-abiding citizens, you have nothing to fear. You are not the target of this state of emergency. And indeed, the police and the army, they will adopt a practical, common sense approach, and there will be proper exercise of discretion in appropriate cases. So you have nothing to fear. However, I want to urge citizens who may have information about criminal activity in the interest and defense and protection of your country. If you want to leave this country of ours a better place for your children to inherit in the future, now is the time to speak up, and now is the time to share that information with the police and the army. We all know what the numbers are. We have Crime Stoppers, we have the regular police lines, and we'll speak more about that. But already what we are seeing is a virtual avalanche of people who are willing to come forward to share information and intelligence with the agency. And the response thus far has been very, very encouraging in this regard. So we want to thank them. I also want to pay special commendation to the police officers who were involved in the shootout in Arima this morning and say to the bandits, the war is on. We have declared a state of war in this country against the bandits and the criminal elements, and we will not stop until we win and we recapture Trinidad and Tobago. This is not about the deprivation of human rights. It is in fact about the restoration of human rights for all our citizens in this country. Thank you very much.
Can you just clarify that last point? Because that's what, when people hear state of emergency, they have the suspending of constitutional rights. Now, is that already in effect, or is that only during the curfew periods, or how is it going to work in terms of the suspension of conflict? Am I in point state now with my constitutional rights already suspended?
No, it is not that your constitutional rights are suspended. What the state of emergency means is that the regulations which will be disseminated to everyone. And this is not the first time Trinidad and Tobago has had a state of emergency. This is, in fact, I believe, the 5th time in our nation's political history that we've had a state of emergency. And the template we've used for the emergency powers regulations is one and the same that was used for the coup in the past. And the regulations, what it does is to give the army and the police special powers. So, for example, you can be arrested and detained for inquiries. The powers of search and seizure can be exercised now without a search warrant. It can be, as you heard from the Commissioner of Police, Acting Commissioner of Police, the Army can act and is now vested and clothed with the authority of a police officer, and they can exercise those powers independently of the police service. Of course, there will be collaboration between these two bodies. And there are other powers. But the idea is not that your constitutional rights are suspended. It is just that the scale is tipped now in favor of the law enforcement agencies to equip them and empower them to fight back. Because the position is that no longer, people are not fighting with handguns anymore, you know. It's submachine guns and automatic rifles. And that, if we do not take stock and wake up, that could lead us to the brink of a precipice that our children will not be around to inherit a Trinidad and Tobago that we would want for them.
Why did you use the borders of the Municipal Corporation Act? Is it just a convenient thing? Why for instance, Port of Spain wasn't delineated from, say, east of George Street and so on? How did you come up with those boundaries?
I think this was intelligence driven. Of course, we are not at liberty to disclose that aspect because it impinges on national security. But the hotspots and the areas where activities, where there was an intensification of activity, based on that, it was felt that these boundaries were the best suited, so that, you know, when you use the Procrustean method, it was the best to get the widest catchment area by reference to the Municipal Corporations Act and the boundaries therein.
Okay, but then you have the Tunapuna Piarco Regional Corporation, which encompasses Maloney, and Maloney is not a hotspot?
Well, I'm not saying that. What I said just now is that we can't share with you the intelligence that has led to the choices we've made, and I ask you to respect that, sir. But what I would say to you is that as said by the Commissioner of Police, those areas will indeed remain the subject of intense police action and indeed army action. Those areas may not be subject to a curfew, but they remain under the blanket of the security operations of the state.